Crokinole, a gentleman's game of, presumably, Canadian origin. But how is it played? Rules vary ever so slightly from setting to setting, but the core principles remain the same. Flick stuff, knock your opponent's stuff off the board, and keep your stuff on it. A standard tournament-sized Crokinole board is a perfect circle, 26 inches across, with a shallow hole carved into the center, surrounded by 8 rubber bumpers equally spread out along a circular line painted 4 inches from the center. Another circle sits 8 inches from the center, and an outer shooting line is just 1 inch inside the edge of the board. The ring formed between these last 2 lines is divided into 4 equal quadrants. The game is most commonly played one-on-one or in teams of 2. In a 2-player game, you'll sit in the center of the quadrant opposite your opponent. When playing doubles, teammates sit opposite each other. It's important to position your chair as close to the center of your quadrant as possible because of the one cheek rule. Once the game starts, the board can't be moved, players can't move their chairs, and one butt cheek must always touch the chair. Seriously, I'm not making this up. It's in all the rule books. Each team is given a set of 12 of these little wooden discs, called buttons. Split them evenly between teammates, but keep them off to the side of the board, not in the ditch. Randomly select a first player and proceed clockwise. On your turn, you'll put one of your buttons flat on the shooting line inside your quadrant and flick it onto the board. A button is in a legal shooting position if it is touching the shooting line and is either entirely inside your quadrant or touching one of the 2 boundary lines. So this is a legal shooting position, and so is this. When flicking the button, use one finger with one swift motion, like so. Alternatively, use a Crokinole cue to shoot your button onto the board, like you're playing a tiny game of billiards. If there are no opponent buttons on the board, that's called a free shot. On a free shot, your button has to land inside of or touching the inner circle. If it doesn't, the button is immediately moved into the ditch. If there is at least one opponent button on the board, your shot must cause at least one of your buttons to strike at least one of your opponent's buttons. If you miss, your button is immediately moved to the ditch. You can bank one of your own buttons into the opponent's button, like so, but if you miss, the button you're shooting and any of your buttons that were struck as a result all get moved to the ditch. If on a legal shot, a button of either color lands in the center hole, remove it and put it in the 20 tin for scoring at the end of the round. Or you can use these fancy plastic holders. If a button lands touching the shooting line, move it to the ditch. Once all 24 buttons have been shot, you'll tally points. Buttons in the 20 tin are worth 20 points each. Buttons that are entirely inside the inner circle are worth 15 points each. Buttons that are entirely inside the middle circle or touching the inner circle are worth 10 points. Buttons in the outer quadrants are worth 5. In a standard game, you'll subtract the lower total from the higher total, and the team that won the round scores that many points, and will shoot first in the next round. First team to 100 is the winner. For this invitational, we're using simplified tournament scoring. If you win the round, you score 2 points. If you tie, you score 1 point. Whoever has the most points at the end of 4 rounds wins the match. And if you're tied, you'll go to a shootout, where each player gets 6 free shots, and the team that sinks the most 20s wins. If you're still tied after the shootout, you'll go to a second shootout. Happy Crokinoling!